Howdy. Thanks for listening to Let the Movie Speak. Before we get started, we'd like to ask a favor of you.
It's a simple favor. If you could just rate and review our show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you listen, that might help other ears get into our ecosystem here and hear another episode. Anyway, enjoy the show. Welcome back, everybody, to Let the Movie Speak. This is our second season. It's our mini-series on heist films. And we have a very interesting little ugly duckling, orphaned stepchild sort of film to discuss today. Not one that I'm sure you saw on all the billboards and in theaters, but interesting nonetheless. My name is Travis.
I am Justin.
J other things.
W. Okay.
Jaywalk here with T Trock. That's us.
Jabberwocky.
How are you, Justin?
You know, I'm a little hungry, but I feel like that gives me the edge I need for professional podcasting of our caliber and nature. I'm hoping that the dinner that I apparently did not consume enough of will drive me to very deep philosophical musings akin to the kind of starving artist trope. So buckle up, everybody, and hopefully I won't be dead by the end of the episode. Or maybe, I mean, we might get a lot of lessons if I do perish.
If you die on this episode, we are going straight to the top of the iTunes new podcasts.
Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's in the fine print. Like, if one person dies, it bumps you up several slots for Apple Podcasts. So do your best to die.
Wow. I don't know why I didn't die a long time ago.
Yeah, that's true. I don't need you. So I don't know what we're even doing here.
Okay.
Anyway, we're going to get into 2008's crime drama heist thing, meta noir kickboxing feature. It's not really a kickboxing movie, but it has the man himself, Jean-Claude Van Damme. So we're going to get into that in a couple minutes here. But before we do, let's talk about what we watched this week. Justin, what did you watch this week?
Hi.
Friend?
Oh, we're not doing the introduction again? Hi, I'm Justin.
No, you're Jaywalk.
Oh.
We got it, Jaywalk. What'd you watch this week,
Oh.
Jabberwocky man?
Thanks, broski. This week I had the privilege, honor, something of watching Brian Regan, American comedian, do his latest stand-up special, which is called On the Rocks, and I think available on Netflix, if not elsewhere. Called On the Rocks, I think, because he's performing live at the Red Rocks Amphitheater in Colorado. Don't know if you've ever been there or seen that, but I have been there, and it's pretty cool, if I do say so myself. So. Anyway, if you like Brian Regan or observational comedy, and let's get real, who doesn't? Okay, then that might be your jam. I think this special takes a little while to get going, even for Brian. I'd say the first 10 minutes are a little like, do I need to turn this off? That sounds pretty harsh, but
jeez,
maybe not. Maybe not quite on top of his game, as he has been. I've had the privilege of seeing him live, and he was kind of on fire. as the children say, los
Yeah.
niños. So I have seen his other specials too. Anyway, this one does turn out to be pretty funny, which I think is the technical term, when you're reading, like, people write about comedians, like,
Pretty funny.
well, he's pretty funny, and then that's it. It's just a byline.
That's
so,
it.
whatever. But, no, what is, I think, interesting to note, though, about this special is that Brian Regan kind of takes the... I feel like there's this current trend in comedy, Travis. I don't know how many years old it is now. And it, with comedy, and with just art in general, nothing is really ever new, right? It's already been done. But it seems very prevalent today that comedians use the stage. Some comedians, not every single one. Okay, don't get it crosswired. But there's a fair amount of comedians that seem to use the stage as an opportunity just to maybe talk about really something traumatic from their life and try to use that as a joke in some way, or talk about their neuroses or their obsessions, or, things that are generally not perceived as something you would want to tell anybody, let alone an audience, but they spin that as kind of a self-therapy tool, perhaps. So Brian does a little bit of this, but in his own way. I don't know if you've seen Brian at all. He's not. He doesn't really go dark. So it's pretty mild, but clearly in that vein. And none of his previous stuff, at least that I'm aware of, has really touched a toe into those kind of waters. So just interesting to see that he's kind of hopping on that bandwagon, for better and for worse. Again, if you like his style, or just want to try out a new comedian, I'd recommend it. And that's about all I have, sir. So what do you got this week?
Like akin to Jerry Seinfeld getting up and being like, "Here's the thing about my therapist." Is it like, is it like that?
Yeah, it kind of. It's more like, I didn't know what obsessive compulsive disorder was, so I had to Google it, and then I decided to make a flow chart of all the symptoms and rank them by level of severity.
Yeah.
And so, it is related. It's a relative, I think, of Seinfeld's. But maybe just by marriage.
It seems like in possibly goodwill to some degree, at least, unless it's just looked at as a marketable trend in comedy. Some of that can be good, right? Like, I'm spitballing here. Like, if the idea is mental illnesses of any stripe are, they have a stigma and people are afraid to talk about them at all. And I do think people get like that about mental illness. Like, I've had people in our family and kind of friend sphere who have had like a mental breakdown or something, and no one knows what to say. They're like,
right.
Are they okay? So I feel like comedians, right? They do a lot of their working out the way they process the world and how making people laugh at whatever's happening in life. So some of that, to some degree, can be good, right? I mean, I don't think this is not the podcast or the conversation where we're going to be like, you know what, we fixed it, guys. We put comedy back on the right tracks, and everybody who has mental health problems, you're fine too. I think it is, although like you called it a trend, and I think that's right, because it seems like old-fashioned jokes that are just well constructed and well delivered. It's almost like not enough. It either has to be like, the most crass, like insane stuff you've ever heard, and that's kind of one brand of comedy, or you have like the bare my soul to the audience and let me show you my deepest, darkest corners of my mind. And I think that's sort of what you're getting at. But yeah, I haven't watched much stand-up comedy lately, but I think I am aware of the phenomenon.
Yeah, and it's not, and I don't point that out to be like, what a sellout or something. Like, it is what it is. Trends come and go, and I don't really, I watched it and I realized that, but it didn't make me think less or more of him, really.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to, I'm sure trends in any genre, right? I mean, are we going to like criticize the Rolling Stones for listening to the Beatles or, to Elvis? Or I think it would be kind of stupid, right? Like, oh, they kind of got on the rock bandwagon too, didn't they? Not very original. It's just that falls a little flat, but it's just interesting, I think, that we are seeing, like you said, kind of a Like, where is Bob Newhart of today?
Yeah.
Answer: he doesn't exist. Well, and thank goodness Bob Newhart's still alive. I'm sorry, Mr. Newhart. I didn't mean to say you were not in
Oh,
existence.
look, he's on the line right now. So you
Oh,
can talk.
gosh.
We'll keep him on
hang
hold
up.
for the
I'm
next
too embarrassed.
45 minutes.
Okay,
and
yeah,
then you can talk to him.
We'll get to him at the end.
Yeah. Stick around for an exclusive interview with 98-year-old Bob Newhart.
Yeah, and Tom Hanks is on the. Oh no, looks like we lost Tom. So I guess it'll just be an exclusive interview with Bobby.
Yeah, he'll
at the
be
end
fine.
there.
He can hang.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you, Mr. Newhart. By the way, yeah. So, like you said, it is just a trend. For better and for worse. And sometimes with comedy or with genres, you can kind of see and anticipate. Like, okay, if this is happening, then I could see this might be the trend in the next 20 years. Oh, hey, Ronald Reagan's our president. What could this lead to? And everyone goes, well, Donald Trump, of course. And actually, I don't know that anyone said that.
Immediately.
Or maybe they did, and they weren't listened to.
Everyone said, this is inevitable.
Right. It just seemed kind of like A equals B plus C,
That's it.
So anyway.
The Pythagorean quantum theory. Yeah.
Right, of astrophysiconomy.
That's it. It's not rocket surgery, people. Come on.
No, I mean, come on. Nor is it brain battery.
That's it.
But for comedy, like where we are now, you talked about kind of two extremes of comedy, and of course that doesn't encompass everything, right?
Yeah,
there's all and there's outliers, and there are people that just tell jokes too. But if we look at the trends that exist now in those extremes, I really have no clue. Like where does it go from here? So it'd be interesting to see.
I agree. So for my money this week, I watched first episode of a new series, and this is
WandaVision.
No more WandaVision.
Oh, we're done with that. Okay.
Yeah, thank goodness. For a while, I could decompress from the universe building, I think. But I decided to venture into the great vastness of space with Armando Iannucci's new series called Avenue 5. So if you're not familiar with Armando Iannucci, he's the brains behind a show called In the Thick of It on the BBC, which got turned into a movie called In the Loop here and around the world, but it was a Hollywood movie. And then he went on to do Veep with Julie Louis-Dreyfus and Tony Hale. Tony Hale? That's the guy who plays Buster, right?
Tony Hale.
Yeah, he's amazing. And then this movie called The Death of Stalin, which I haven't seen yet, but I think I will really enjoy. So Avenue 5 is this series in the same vein. What he does is sort of mockumentary style. It's not always political. It's like bureaucracy satire more than anything. So it could be about politics, like in Veep. In the Loop, it's really about just governmental structures. It's not about like political party and rhetoric and that kind of thing. It's really funny writing, searing though. So like if you're if any sort of like harsh language doesn't hit your ears the right way, he's not the guy for you in general. But I will say Avenue 5 is perhaps the most tame. It's not like people are, at least as of yet, hurling the most creative insults at each other that you've ever heard written, but it definitely does poke fun at like the idea of who's in charge. It's kind of like if WALL-E was written by Armando Iannucci. It's this like space cruise in the future of people who are going on an 8-week orbit around Saturn, I think. And Hugh Laurie plays the captain of the ship. Josh Gad, who you might know as the voice of Olaf in the Frozen movies, if you're, a living, breathing person.
He also plays some really obscure character in the Kenneth Branagh version of Murder on the Orient Express.
Yeah, I think that's right.
I don't know if you ever saw that. That was not... You just brought... I'm sorry, you triggered a kind of a like PTSD, kind of a not great memory.
Yeah,
so.
I've heard it's not good. It seemed like it should have been fun, and I heard mostly bad things.
Well, yeah, and I think really the evidence for its downfall was right in front of us in form of the trailer. I mean,
yeah, that's
YouTube,
a bad
folks,
trailer. Holy cow.
Look at the trailer, and they think it's like super awesome that Kenneth Branagh turns around at the end and says his character's name with his ridiculous mustache, and it's like that's not That character's never meant to be cool. He's meant to be kind of ridiculous and pretentious. So
Yeah.
thank you for missing the point. Anyway,
Yeah.
I digress.
Yes. So Avenue 5, first episode, this is like a 30-minute show. So you watch one episode and you're like, oh, that was scrumptious. And it's over. And you don't have to commit a lot of your life to it. I rather enjoyed it. It's had some really good, sharp comedic writing. Everybody in it's really funny. Josh Gad is like amazing. I think there's this one bit that I'll just allude to about the ship being out in space and then like the control center being on Earth. And normally we talk about like in technology, sometimes like if you're watching people in the news, there's like a 3-second delay or, something like that. And people have to navigate that. And sometimes it leads to awkward timing. In this show, they have a 26-second delay. And so they have to like speak to each other with 26-second gaps. And I think it's such a simple joke, but it's also really they have fun playing with kind of simple setups and payoffs like that. And I'm definitely gonna watch more of it because it's 30 minutes. It made me laugh, and Hugh Laurie is kind of awesome. So I would recommend giving Avenue 5 a shot. That's on HBO Max. That's all I got. Justin, should we get into our heist film for this week?
Let's go rob it.
Rob it. Here we go.
What's in the case?
That information isn't necessary.
Is it heavy? Is it explosive? Is it chained to some unlucky bloke's wrist? We're gonna have to chop it off?
All right.
What is it?
What in the bag she gave you?
She didn't give me a bag. Melanie was not a part of the plan.
Oh, no, we can get through the rock. No worries there. Easiest thing in the world. Why, we just blow right through it.
10 ought to do it, don't you think? You think we need one more? You think we need one more? All right, we'll get one more.
So, Travis, every week, Robert De Niro is asking us what's in... And he comes by every week to say the same stuff into the microphone.
So nice of him. I call him Bobby, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Bobby. And this nice lady comes to like do the little dialogue with him. I don't know if they're ever going to answer the question. The first time it was like, oh, interesting. I guess this is like a mini serial, and we're going to get the answer next week.
Right.
But I mean, we've got one of these left, and I don't really know if he's gonna. And also, I don't know who Melanie is. Like, thank you, Pam Grier, for coming in too.
Yeah.
Really appreciate the autograph, especially. But
thank you, Pam.
I'm just befuddled. Did I miss? Like, was I not there for that pre-production meeting? I just don't know if we're gonna get answers.
We
to
did.
These things.
We did. We excluded you on purpose.
Oh.
They don't.
Oh, wow.
Like your current views on the trends in stand-up comedy. So.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's awkward.
Yeah.
What do I need to do? What do I need to like? Do I need to retract my thesis?
You need to call Brian Regan and tell him you're sorry. I think.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So you get on that, and I'm gonna
okay.
I'm gonna get into this episode.
Okay.
Does that sound okay to you?
Yeah, I'll be back.
Okay, great. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the section we call Hatching the Plan, which is our intro to the film, and this is a interesting little bugger. Jcvd, all caps, 2008. That's the name of the movie and the name of the man at the center, Jean-Claude Van Damme. If you're not, I feel like everybody's somewhat aware of who Jean-Claude Van Damme is, but he is a kickboxing talented martial artist, actor in a whole slew.
Was that italicized?
There was an ellipses before it, I think. Yeah, in a whole slew of action films dating back to like the very early 80s, and he's hugely popular internationally. He is. Let's see, like of late, I'm sure has he been in one of those Expendable movies? He has to have been, right?
Yeah, I think he turned down one of the roles in one of them, and then so I think he turned down the role for 2, and then I think he's in the third one.
He's in 2. He must have.
Oh, he's in 2.
He must have not done the first
down
one because this is his credit. In the Expendables 2, he plays villain. That's his name. So anyway, this is a stony-jawed Belgian fellow. And he is not known for his acting chops. He's known for his physical prowess. And this movie really does everything it can to kind of upend that understanding. The director is Mabrouk El-Meshri. Is that how we're going to agree to? I don't care.
Sure.
Sure, yeah. Who is definitely green at this point. He's not done a feature film other than something called Virgil in 2005, which looks like a low budget flick. So this is his first like big boy movie, and we'll get to talking about what that bears itself out. But Justin, I assume, like it is mine, that this was your first time watching Jcvd.
That's a big fat correctamundo, sir. I remember when the trailer for this was limited release, I think, in our area of California. So I think some of the theaters maybe those pull back the veil a little bit in the Bay Area where we were.
He's zeroing in. It's like that scene in a spy thriller where like they're like,
the camera's zooming in more.
What do they always say? They always say enhance. Enhance, and it just zooms in perfect clarity, no matter what the distance is.
Do you know what they say in the Marvel movies?
What do they say?
He's in the hex. So anyway, I think because of our location, we were privileged to get some limited releasing of this movie in 2008. And
this
so I
was definitely in the Dome Theater. Do you remember the Dome Theater?
Was it really? Yeah, it is no longer.
No,
that is sad.
It's gone. Yeah, the Dome Theater was this little not an art house. Okay, it was a theater for foreign films and wide release stuff and just limited releases. So it was this like old school funky retro dome structure. There was this huge dome in the middle, and then some like kind of sub buildings attached to it and around it. But that like many theaters of its ilk has gone by the wayside. I guarantee you this played at the Dome Theater and maybe nowhere else.
Yeah, I would believe it. Or maybe like one theater in San Francisco proper.
Sure.
But yeah, so I remember the trailer and remember thinking, oh, that looks really interesting. And, being a little younger at the time, I thought, maybe this really will have something. So unfortunately, after watching the movie, I think it has a little less than it would like to think that it does. But
the trailer is good, though. I remember, like, and I'm just remembering it now that you mentioned it because I definitely saw the trailer. I don't know if we talked about it. This would have been around the time where we started like hanging out and talking about movie nerd stuff. But I remember seeing the like DVD cover at Blockbuster, and it's this like stony kind of grayish hue, sepia looking Jean-Claude Van Damme. He just looks old, that's clearly what they're going for is like, I don't know about washed up, but like he looks like he's seen some stuff, right? And it's just his face right in front and Jcvd and nothing else, right? And the trailer I remember played like, I'm pretty sure they cut in like him fighting with people and whatever, but at the same time you got this sense that like this is not a kick punch blast the music kind of an affair. Is that the impression you got of? Yeah,
definitely. And I think there might have been some, and we could just be making up our own trailer here for all I know. But I seem to recall some of his soliloquy that's given to the camera being in the trailer and thinking, what is going on with Mr. Van Damme?
Yeah.
And
I feel like that might have been voiceover in it or something. But now we're just making our own trailer in our heads. But
right. And then there was a bear that stood up and it was really cool.
There's lots of Belgian chocolates. Yeah. Anyway, it's directed by Mabrouk El Meshri, written by him. It says scenario by Mabrouk El Meshri, and then in collaboration with Frédéric Benudis. So I don't know what that means.
So I think that one of those guys might have been. Is one of them also a producer? That's going to be really boring to hear us talk about that. But I recall that one person, not the director, I think. Said Van Damme, you have to play yourself in a movie. You got to promise me that we're gonna get you in a film where you play a fictionalized version of yourself. And so I think he may have birthed that idea.
Okay, this is the weirdest set of writing credits. There's scenario by one guy in collaboration with another guy, adaptation by the director again, and then original idea by two other dudes. And then finally, writer, fifth person, Christoph Turpin. I don't know what this must have been like. A bunch of dudes who were like, "This would be so cool," except in their most European voices.
Yes, that would be "c'est cool."
Yeah,
right.
So yeah, that's what they said. Anyway, this is Jcvd. It's definitely got heist elements to it. It's billed as an action comedy crime movie. I would argue that it's trying most often to be a drama more than anything else.
I would agree.
But that's what it is, and we're about to find out what that heist entails, what the story entails, and if any of it is any good in this next section we call The Goods.
You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off.
I want to take over his operation, and I need you to help me break it.
What want to do to me, eh? I've got Jessel's money.
I thought it was understood that when it came to our little enterprise, Mom was the word.
And if we care to comment on our sound cues this episode, we might as well. I don't know what your feelings are on the Coen Brothers version of The Lady Killers, but man, Tom Hanks makes me very happy most of the time. And that pull clip that we have in there where he's like, "Mom is the wood," is just it warms the cockles of my heart.
The line that I appreciate most from that movie is, "I left my wallet in El Segundo," and it gets better every time it's said.
I think that one. Let's talk about the Coen Brothers for no reason, but I think that one gets a little bit better the more I watch it, rather than how other movies age the other way. But anyway, back to JCVD. Justin, give the folks a plot summary. What is this sucker about?
Oh boy. Well, it has a really weird kind of point of view dilemma, almost, I'll say. But the basicness of it, I think, is that Mr. Jean-Claude is portrayed as perhaps not at the top of his game. He can't seem to get parts in movies that he wants to be a part of. He's not doing well financially. He's in a custody battle over his daughter. And so, for whatever reason, he goes back to Belgium, where he is from in real life and in this movie. And there's a lot of blurring of the real Jean-Claude from the semi-fictionalized one in this movie. I think it's interesting just how much overlap is there. At one point his parents, I don't know, I assume they're not his real parents, I assume they're actors, but his parents in this movie at least come in, and Van Damme is Van Damme's stage name, and so it's like Vanderberg or something. I don't remember what it is. Sorry, Jean-Claude fans. So it's just interesting that there's a certain level of detail paid to him in reality, but then and I think maybe to the detriment of the film, it doesn't always marry up. Yeah. Because there's some very, as I'll get into or try to get into in just a second here, there's some very disparate kind of tonal inconsistencies, and in one point you maybe are ready to laugh, and then you do laugh, and then you think, was I supposed to laugh? And then it becomes an exercise in existentialism. Yeah. Anyway, so he gets back to Belgium and goes into a post office to get money, because I guess that's what they do in Belgium, wire transfers. Then unfortunately he's involved, and he's taken hostage by some robbers, and they're trying to do a heist. However, they're all extremely incompetent, and not really sure what they're doing. And so, the gist is him essentially trying to, I don't know if we necessarily need to give the whole plot, but he is trying to get out of there. And it's an interesting, again, because to the movie's credit, Van Damme being this muscular guy, even though he's middle-aged or whatever at this point, and having international stardom, he's not really any more able to help than anyone else there. This is not like... There's lots of Steven Seagal jokes in this movie, but there's no... what's that Steven Seagal movie, Travis, where he's like the cook on the ship, but he used to be a Navy SEAL? Under Siege, I think, is the one. Yeah, Under Siege. Okay. So yes, even though he is hostage, this movie's not called Under Hostage, and Van Damme is not at all in any position to help these people break out. So it gives a real kind of... Because, in reality... That would be the case, right? It doesn't matter how big your biceps are. If people have guns pointed to your head and to the point of, or held to the heads of other innocent people, you kind of, to a certain point, need to kind of go along to get along. Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting. To Van Damme's credit and to the script's credit, I think what it does well is paints him as a sympathetic and a likable guy. Yeah. And to Van Damme's credit too, he does some real acting here. This is not Street Fighter. or whatever. Really, what's kind of the worst material that Van Damme's been given to work with. Unfortunately, I think he's had more than his fair share. And I'm sure it's not like it's forced upon him, right? He signs and gets a check. So
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say I feel like bad for him, but it is interesting because I see this movie and I think, at the end of it, I think, this guy really had some, and he still does, I think, have some acting potential. And it's just interesting to me that he hasn't quite found that good marriage, and maybe he's not interested in it. I don't know, but it's interesting to me that he hasn't found that marriage with a director that's maybe more experienced or has a stronger vision. Because when we watch this movie, Travis, I don't know about you, but the kind of color scale that's used and the weird vignette that's over everything, and the way that this movie is shot, which tends to be very chaotic at times, is none of those things are in service to the movie. And to me, they all take away from what I think the filmmakers thought was going to bring about a more of a gut punch or put you in a different state of mind or something. But to me, it all distracts to the detriment of what could be a stronger story.
Yeah, I mean, you use the word juxtaposition, and basically, he gets caught in the middle of something. He is publicly himself, right? Like, he goes back to Belgium, which is where he's from, after being in, assumed, Hollywood, even if he didn't, live there full time. He's been in Hollywood, making Hollywood films, and among other things. He comes back to Belgium in this story, and his hometown, or home country at least, love him, and the look of it is, it's hard to say anything other than post 9/11, which is one of Justin's favorite phrases. Just post anything, anytime. Everything is post something and pre something else. But anyway, in let's say early to mid aughts filmmaking had a very specific sheen to it. I feel like as soon as digital filmmaking started becoming the norm, and I don't know that this was shot on digital or film, it's probably digital by the look of it, but color grading was people were like, we can do this instantly on the computer and probably have more options. And so there's just this glossy veneer to the whole thing that's kind of sepia in color palette, but also like vignette, I think you over text or something, it looks like Vaseline on the lens almost. And it's definitely an attempt at stylization. The overall taste in my mouth from this was it very much feels like it's wanting to be Tarantino when he's cool. You know what I mean? Down to a few key things, but there's humor mixed in with some brutal violence. It's not, an ultra violent film by any means, but you see people get straight up shot to death. You see people, in physical altercations and screaming profanity at each other, all that kind of normal crime film stuff. But at the same time, they do kind of make weird little jokey observations, sort of a la Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction, or something like that. It has title cards, which look kind of Tarantino-esque in their execution. And then there's music that is not just juxtaposed to all that modern kind of grittier post 9/11 stuff, but it's also funky. It's almost Mancini-esque, in its horn heaviness and its, I don't know, 70s upbeat kind of funky while this stuff's going on. Part of the subplots, that weave their way through this movie is this kid is stuck in this post office bank kind of place, and he becomes sort of a point of contention where the cops want to get the kid out, but the guys who are robbing the place, they need to keep the kid in because he's their leverage. So there's some serious stuff going on here, and then this music just kind of comes in and out at weird times. Overall, it's a confused movie. You know what I mean? It starts out with a movie shoot that Jean-Claude Van Damme is working his way through, and you get to see him do some of his kind of classic kind of awesome martial arts choreography stuff, and then that morphs into a scene where he just walks off the set and goes and talks to a director about how he's unhappy. You get to see a custody battle kind of courtroom sequence where they're trying to take away, I think, his custody because of whatever reason. They don't really say he was abusive or irresponsible. It's just for some reason they're getting a divorce or whatever. The daughter doesn't really want to live with. It's just so there's some real like drama stuff mixed in here, and then he gets caught up in the middle of a heist, and that's just where the movie really lives. And overall, I mean, we can break it up into aesthetic. We can talk about the narrative structure, right, which has to do with those title cards and kind of bouncing around chronologically. And themes and what the movie's really saying when we get to our next section. But yeah, for me, Justin, it's a confused little duck of a movie because the director's seemingly trying really hard to like squeeze every ounce of style into it, and yet like if you're gonna do juxtaposition, it has to like they have to complement each other. It can't just be a juxtaposition that feels completely alien, so
totally agree.
Yeah, we have I'm going to ask you this is a series of questions, Justin. We'll play a little game here, okay?
Okay.
I'm going to give you I wrote them down, the 4 title cards that come up in this movie. And this is me making a comment about how it's a little bit less smart than it thinks it is. But I want you to give me your best interpretation, whether it's like true and you were like, no, I got that one. I understood it. It spoke to me. Or if it was nonsense, you can just make something up. That's fine. So here's title card number 1, which comes up a few minutes into the film. It says 1, the answer before the question. Well, Justin, what does that mean?
Didn't know then, still don't know now.
Okay. Number 2, time and the hour runs through the roughest day. And that one has really weird, like, E.E. Cummings-esque, like, capitalization. Or, like every other word is capitalized, but not in a sensical way. So what does that one mean?
Don't know.
Okay, number 3, stone falls on egg. Egg breaks.
No duh.
And number 4, egg falls on stone. Egg breaks.
Again, duh, no.
Yeah, so confused, right? This is a confused movie because if you just take those title cards out or do some other transition, it's not even that the out of sequence thing bothers me the most. It's that the heft of what it's trying to get me to buy into isn't really there.
I totally agree, man. When you brought up the title cards, this director I've read an interview with him that he said he's very influenced by Jean-Luc Godard, the French director that did Breathless and a gazillion other movies, and some of which are obviously very good and worldwide revered. I think the difference is what I think is this guy really likes Godard, this guy really likes Tarantino, but he's not. He's his own man. And I think it takes some self-insight maybe to go, okay, I really like these guys, and I really like the title card thing is a total. I mean, I guess Tarantino has done things like that too, right? But that seems more to me like a more Godard kind of influence, and this it makes no sense. Jean-Luc Godard can do that, or Tarantino in certain instances can do that because it's in their DNA and it's to the service of the story, and it's how they communicate, right?
Yeah.
But I don't speak Armenian. So I'm not going to just like go on Google Translate or whatever and just try to speak to you in bad Armenian right now, because it's not my language. And so, however weak that analogy may be, I feel like that's sort of like what Mabruk is trying to do. In that he's like, I really like these guys. I really like when this director did this thing, so I'm going to replicate it because I really like them. And it just fails because that's not in his DNA.
Yeah.
And honestly, after watching this movie, I don't know totally what's in this guy's DNA. I hope that it's the stuff that really works. I would like to think it's the funnier parts that, excuse me, a little podcast burp there. Hope you caught it.
Bonus, you call in right now and you tell us that you heard the podcast burp, and we'll send you a Tums.
Okay, good deal. Yeah. No, Bob. No, Mr. Newhart,
no,
that's not for you.
You just stay on hold.
Yeah. No, so I just it's a bummer to me because I do think obviously this guy can make a movie. It wasn't incoherent. We understood what was going on. I think this guy probably has a lot of potential, and hopefully he's done some great work since or is going to. But and not just the title cards, but like you said, the music. Especially when he's in the taxi at the beginning, when he's come to Belgium.
Yeah.
And it's not just like, bow chicka bow wow, but it's like, bow chicka bow, I left my home in Memphis City.
Yeah,
it's
there's
like,
some needle drops
what?
in this thing that are really, like, questionable. Like, the movie opens with, is it like Roberta Flack or something? It's like...
Yeah, it's in your face.
Hard Times. It's that song, Living Hard Times in this crazy... What is...
Yeah.
Are we trying to say that he is fallen on hard times? Because if so, that's
Right.
just really on the nose, and it just is so weird. And there's a few of those, but it's also the incidental music. That's just like,
Oh, yeah.
what worked then, Justin? I mean, like you said, some of the comedic stuff worked for you. I mean, I didn't hate this movie. I wasn't in pain watching it, but I was just kind of squinting, like, like that was my general feeling.
Yeah. No, so what worked for me is really minor stuff. It's unfortunately a little bit... Well, it's not quite this bad. I was going to use the analogy of, J.J. Abrams getting the small stuff in Star Wars, his Star Wars movies right,
Yeah.
and then just missing the big picture.
Yeah, no.
It's not quite that dire, I don't think. That's really unfair to this movie,
Let's
I think.
not compare him to J.J. Abrams. Don't even get me started on J.J. Abrams.
Yeah. Okay, let's not do that. Here's your pacifier, sir.
Thank you.
Good. So... to me, the stuff that works is the human-to-human interactions, like Jean-Claude in the taxi with the taxi driver.
That's
and
good.
To this film, yeah, like you never even see the taxi driver in that scene, at least. And I thought that was great. She's like, berating him, like, how dare you be an a-hole to me? And even though he's not, he's just kind of a guy. Like, I had a bad day. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And so it's a really interesting time to kind of learn, like, okay, Van Damme, at least this version of him, is not some, jerk. He really does have a conscience, and he does care what people think about him, and he wants to be nice to people, but he's also going through hard times, as we're made painfully aware. And, just the stuff with the goofy guys in the video store. Oh, probably a good time to note, listeners, if you want to watch this movie, you might have to buy it if you really want to, which I can't necessarily recommend. But if you try to watch this like on Amazon or
you rent it on YouTube or anything,
it's dubbed. Okay, so you won't notice that because in the first scene, Jean-Claude is speaking in English to the director, who's getting translated from whatever language they are speaking in, and then but by the time you get to Belgium, where they're supposed to be speaking French. At least in this movie, I understand. I don't need all the hate mail about there's multiple languages spoken in Belgium, please. But primarily,
they speak French in this original movie, so yeah, that's what it is.
But in the dubbed version, they speak English, and it's a horrible dubbing.
Is there such a thing as a good dubbing? Let's just. I mean,
I think there is for some of the old kung fu movies that you and I like watching.
Well,
it's got to be so bad that it's good.
That's right. Yeah.
This is just bad that it's painful, and it's still bad. And if egg drops on stone, stone drops on record producer who is dubbing, breaks building, and where we go some have come out of the movie.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty clear. It just do yourself a favor. If you're gonna watch this movie, you gotta. I think if you're really that interested in this concept, I'm gonna guess that subtitles are not gonna make or break it for you.
Yeah,
and
after our glowing review here, people are gonna be like, I have got to seek this out. No, we ended up doing. We were fully willing to like buy it or rent it or something, but like I couldn't even find a version to buy that wasn't dubbed. So we ended up finding some rando link to it that was not dubbed, and it wasn't like amazing quality. It wasn't like 1080p or anything, but it was like okay. It was like watchable, and the original audio was in there, which was, I think, a perfectly acceptable trade-off in this case.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And it is an interesting movie. I think this is leaping ahead a little bit, so I'll just try to keep this to a sentence, but. This is probably a movie, if you're really... okay, this is probably very small in the Venn diagram, the person that fits into this spectrum. But
let's see what it is.
if you're interested in Jean-Claude Van Damme, and but you also wanted to answer the question, but can he actually really act?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then this is the movie for you.
In the Venn diagram, the overlap is like so small that like there's some guy named Phil that's just like, that's me, and he's the one guy inside of that Venn diagram. And Phil, this is
for you, buddy.
Yeah, this is for you, man. Okay, so some stuff that I thought was interesting and of note. Nothing in this movie made me go like, holy cow, that was amazing. There wasn't one moment like that, but I think all the acting is good. Even the B characters, some people who are just sort of incidental. Like is he like a police commissioner or something?
Yeah,
He's really good. The robbers are perfectly good. They at least sell the fact that they're like way in over their heads, which is interesting to some degree.
Yeah.
All the hostages feel like real people. There's this one kind of doofusy robber who's part of the gang who like makes Jean-Claude Van Damme kick a cigarette out of a guy's mouth to show his like roundhouse kick ability or whatever. But I do think it's like the meta stuff is so heavy-handed, right? So like the guys who first see Jean-Claude on the street before he goes into the post office, they work at a video store and they're like watching. What are they watching? Are they watching like some Denzel movie or?
I don't know what they're watching. Sorry.
Some like stereotypical action flick, like a Seagal movie or something like that. So the police end up like communicating to the hostage situation from inside of a video store, which is like a clearly calculated move, from the director and writer and whatever.
Right.
One of those director collaborated by, story by one of those people. The other thing that we already kind of alluded to, which is probably the most compelling sequence in the movie, and I've heard other actors like in interviews, like at press junkets and stuff, that I've heard people like praise this movie, and particularly the monologue sequence, right? Or you called it a soliloquy, because it is like a complete break of the fourth wall. He's in this room with these hostages stuck there, and then he just starts rising up like on some kind of unseen platform, and he goes above the set of this post office, and you just see like, lights and rigging stuff behind him, and then he delivers this very personal, heartfelt monologue about being Jean-Claude Van Damme and like, how did I get to this moment and where things went wrong, and like it is interesting. It is kind of what the movie could have been. I don't want like an hour and a half of all that, but it is good in the way that the whole movie could have been really good. Jean-Claude shows a little bit of some chops there, I think, or at least some real, even if it's not acting chops, it's like I believe him. You know what I mean? Like I believe that that guy feels that way. I don't think he's just putting on a face. So it seems like a deeply personal story. Like I can see why he'd want to do this movie, Justin.
Yeah, I can too. And that soliloquy monologue, to me, that is the centerpiece of the movie. That is what made it kind of worth watching. I think even though it doesn't land totally right, because I distinctly recall listening to him say the things that he said. And then when he gets to near the end, it's like, I hope I don't die in this post office or something. And it totally took me out. Yeah. Because it's like, no, you don't bring us back to this movie, because nothing in this movie has been as good as what you're saying. Yeah. And really, whether or not it even fits in the movie, I really don't care, because he was, like you said, I believe him, either as a person or as an actor or both. And so I feel like it would have been, maybe some potential was missed for that being stronger, just to keep it even separate, just to keep it sacred from the rest of the movie. Don't reference, going back to the post office. Just reference going back to a movie, or don't even do that. Yeah. And then just descend back in.
The other thing that I thought was kind of note, and it's really like it's just a crumb of something, but those video store guys, before they have their encounter with Jcvd, they're watching this action flick and just kind of talking about like, oh, I kind of look like this guy in the movie, and don't you like this movie, and that, just like some chit chat kind of stuff. And they are obviously of like some kind of Middle Eastern ethnicity or whatever. And the one guy makes a comment about like bad guys in the movies or something, right? And he says like, well, in the 70s it was always Viets, and and now it's always Arabs, right? And I think like that's a place where like the post 9/11 nature of this movie and the way that it feels and looks and sounds, it actually tries to say something interesting, because that's so clearly the case. If you watch any, again, like Born Identity, Bond, post 9/11, even like Iron Man, right? Like Iron Man came out as the first big Marvel Studios movie, and it's like, who are the bad dudes, or what's the bad situation he's caught up in? It's like, Middle Eastern terrorism. And so there's definitely a depiction thing going on. And then if I'm not mistaken, the one hostage who, after, most folks make it out of this thing, the one hostage who runs out and gets tackled by police because they don't really know what's going on and they're trying to figure it out. He's like, I'm a hostage. What are you doing? And that guy is like, the one Middle Eastern looking dude who is stuck in that room. So there's some purposeful, some kind of current of something there, but they don't really do a whole lot with it, Justin.
No, it's not a deep dive at all.
Yeah.
But I mean, kudos for going there. Like, this movie, it's not really expected, even though it's this meta kind of whatever. But it's kind of the similar thing, I think, with the daughter, right?
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, fathers and daughters, that's a topic that's never going to get old for storytelling, and you're never going to mine the depths of that, and that goes for any relationship.
Right.
Mothers and sons, fathers and sons. I'm not trying to say it's something exclusive to fathers and daughters, just to say that any trauma or dysfunction in that kind of relationship is ripe for any genre of movie, really. And so it's a bummer that we don't get more, because I think this is what I think, Travis. This movie doesn't know what its heart is.
Yeah.
And the heart of this movie, it doesn't exist, because it's supposed to be about Van Damme and his daughter.
Yeah.
And the tension there, and just wanting to make things right or something. But instead, it's just like, Van Damme had a bad day. Van Damme got in a heist.
Yeah.
Then Van Damme's daughter comes back in the end. Oh, by the way, she was in the beginning. And it's not... So like, in the very end, when he's in jail, right, for extorting the government so much money they tried to pay off to his lawyers in the custody battle, or something like that.
Yeah.
His daughter comes to visit him in the last scene. And it's obvious that he's moved by that she would, she is said in the courtroom in the beginning, she's embarrassed by Dad. Mm-hmm. And in the end, it's like she's coming of her own volition. Or, I mean, that's kind of what we're led to believe. It's not like it's really spelled out. That's kind of my take on that. And then they both say hi to each other, and he's kind of choked up. To me, that's a great ending scene for a different movie.
Yeah. That
actually explored that relationship and earned that. But as such, it's like they sit down and say nothing, and it's like that's this movie.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
They say hi to each other, and that's, except for Van Damme's soliloquy monologue, that's most of the movie. The criminals don't really say anything about, like, hey, what's our plan? They don't freaking know.
Yeah.
The police are like, who's in there? They don't really know what's going on. Van Damme's parents, hey, what are you doing, son?
Yeah.
Nobody has answers for anything. Nobody's really got impetus in this movie. And so I think that without a real center, which this movie doesn't have, it just kind of swirls around interesting meta discourses and some like you mentioned about, how are people of Middle Eastern descent viewed in a post 9/11 world? Mm-hmm. There I go with my catchphrase. But that's all we get, and so it's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, I think the one supporting character that maybe was pretty consistently interesting to watch, because he has a bit more to do. I can't even tell you his name, because like the credits for this movie are as mystifying to find as the movie itself. There's names and there's character names, but they're not real character names. They're things like Client Video Club, lots of French words that I don't know. Technician, telecom, that must be like phone worker person. And then, but none of the pictures are there on IMDb. So like, these are obviously like not huge, mega stars or anything. But the main guy, who's the robber who kind of tries to run the show when things go awry with the weird hair. Okay. So that guy, is, I think, a good presence on screen. And I immediately pegged him for an aesthetic, like analog of a character from another heist movie. So if you've never seen it, it is a classic directed by Sidney Lumet, Dog Day Afternoon with Al Pacino. Okay. So this is a bank robbery movie from 1975. It's like, it's very good, but that's not what we're here to talk about. This actor in this movie, John Cazale, he has this really weird receding hairline and long hair combination. Almost like, if you think Anton Chigurh from No Country, but with less hair in the front. He has that same exact like hairstyle, and it's so odd that I think it must be some kind of little nod. But I bring that up, Justin, because I just want to read you a thing which I found fascinating. John Cazale, who played the character in Dog Day Afternoon, who the guy in this movie looks just like, essentially. This guy has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He has 8 acting credits. Okay, he also did cinematography for something and editor for something. But he's an actor, and he didn't live all that long. He lived from 1935 to 1978, so he obviously died young. But listen to his credits, Justin. Okay, so John Cazale, he was in a short called The American Way. Don't know what that is. He was in one episode of a TV show called NYPD, which is probably just a like procedural from back in the day. So listen to these film credits, Justin. This is going to blow your mind. Are you ready to have your mind absolutely blown? Okay.
Give me cerebral hemorrhage time.
You're not going to guess the first one, but here it is.
Is it The Godfather?
Shut up. Yeah. Let's pretend like this isn't the third time I've had to redo this.
Okay,
yes.
Sorry.
Dude, he played Fredo in The Godfather, 1972. It's supposed to be, a pretty okay movie. He was in Francis Ford Coppola's The Conversation, which has our good friend Gene Hackman. He's not really a good friend, but I'd love him to be our good friend.
He's a great friend.
Yeah. And then he was in The Godfather Part 2, 1974. And then he was in Dog Day Afternoon in 1975. He was in some TV miniseries called The Godfather Saga. I don't know what that was, but I'm assuming it's some kind of spin-off thing of The Godfather, and he played Fredo again. And then he was in The Deer Hunter in 1978. And then he died, and I assume, or he just stopped making movies altogether. I didn't look that up. But that dude had a crazy run. Godfather Conversation, Godfather 2, Dog Day Afternoon, another Godfather thing, and then The Deer Hunter. And then he was like, that's it for him. He must have died. I'll see. How did he die? Yeah, he was ill with cancer while he filmed The Deer Hunter, so that sucks. But anyway, the guy in Jcvd who looks like him is very good, but I do want to ask you about his death scene because it's kind of nuts. He gets shot in the head because he says something mean about another guy's mommy, and then he keeps talking for like 15 seconds, and then he falls over, and there's no blood. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what to make of that. Is any of that possible?
I think it's just bad stylistic. I mean, weird things happen, right? And probably weirder things have happened. Without getting into weird details, in my limited experience with such things, you can survive being shot in the head, but usually it just doesn't affect you then. Like if it didn't break your brainstem and it's just bouncing around in there, it might make you a little goofy, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe it goes around your brain or whatever. But this guy obviously got center punched in the middle of his skull with a bullet.
Yeah, it's like smoking in the middle too. There's
right, and then he's just kind of mumbling and talking, and I think you're right, dude. And like, what are we supposed to make of that? And I think it's supposed to be like kind of. Again, it's like, man, I'm not trying to be mean, but it's like weak Tarantino. Like it just doesn't have a punch at all. It's just like, it's kind of weird that the guy is still standing up, and
it's kind of like the thing in Pulp Fiction, right, where they like the guy turns around in the car and the gun accidentally goes off, and then they have to clean the brains off the seat, and like they make all these jokes about it, and that works better because we don't even watch that happen. We just watch the aftermath of it, and it's like a very day in the life of a career criminal kind of thing, and they're trying to. I don't know. I feel like that works better because it's not like we're watching the smoke come out of the bullet in his head and he's like babbling, and then I don't even like. That's I think the point, Justin, where I wrote down, am I supposed to be laughing? Because I just didn't know.
Yeah. And I don't know either. It didn't make me laugh. But I think it's just because it doesn't work on screen. I think it's not clear. Is that supposed to be really dramatic? I mean, it's like you get shot in the middle of your forehead. I think it's kind of a foregone conclusion the audience expects you will die.
Yeah.
Unless you're a Marvel character. So I don't know why draw that out. Why not just bang and he falls over? Because, like you said, it's rather bloodless.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just another kind of quirk of this is an interesting movie for better and for worse.
Yeah.
And that's just another interesting part.
Yeah. Weird, wild stuff. Should we do an autopsy on that guy and the whole movie in our final section here?
I got my buzzsaw.
Let's see if it's worth our time, folks.
You want about the law or something?
No, it's okay.
I'm so very sorry. I propose that we consider this matter closed.
I sure hope you didn't do anything stupid, Jackie. See you when I see you.
What do you say, Justin? Was this time served in the slammer worth your time with Jcvd? I wouldn't want to be at a slammer with Jcvd, not after those kickboxing lessons we see him giving at the end.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe I do want to be in the slammer because I'd like to get free lessons from him, too. Did you think it was a little weird, though? Okay, so, like, this movie made some good, like we mentioned, some good comments about, race and ethnicity, even though they're not really investigated. Hey,
Yeah.
At least it said something. But in the end, he's in jail in Belgium, or
Right.
prison. It's not really, he's confined in Belgium, guys. That's what matters. And, you would think the people that are confined in Belgium are probably going to be speaking French, but he's giving lessons in English. And the one black guy there is like in perfect American English. Well, what if he comes at me with a knife? And it's like, what happened to the racial sensitivity and
And what is this guy doing here? Like, yeah.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So that was a little odd to me. But be that as it may, again, if you're gonna watch this movie, you got to either be us or Phil. I don't really see this having much appeal. Generally speaking, it's a weird, odd movie. And I'm not disappointed that I watched it, but I'm also not really moved. I'm not going to watch it again. I might watch the soliloquy again, just to remind me that Jean-Claude is capable of acting, and maybe, because with, like, he's still making movies, right? And they still tend to be the kind of straight-to-video kind of, I don't know, that's not a thing anymore, straight-to-streaming, whatever.
Yeah.
Kind of, deals, which are, it's kind of a bummer, because I see this and I go, well, maybe this guy really had some potential that's never going to be really investigated, and this is as close as we get.
There's almost, I think an unintended meta thing that is interesting here, which is what you just said, right? Like, this movie is swinging very hard for the fences at saying, look at him. The poster says it with that close-up of his kind of old, gnarled face, and his acronym, the acronym of his initials, rather, in big block letters. But it's almost like you were never going to get a Scorsese or somebody that seasoned and deft to do a movie like this. But for it to work, you almost need that level of like artistic, hand to make it work. So it's a confused movie that is pretty enjoyable to watch from beginning to end because it's not overly long. It doesn't do the smell your own scent pretentiousness thing, but it also isn't nearly as smart as it kind of postures itself as being. Like, nothing in the movie, like Justin said, nothing in the movie rises to the height, literally and metaphorically, of Jean-Claude in the monologue sequence. And you might get a chuckle here and there from some of the situational stuff. You might enjoy, it's kind of tense, you're kind of waiting to see what happens with the hostage situation and all that. But none of that is like Michael Mann's Heat level, edge of your seat stuff. None of the funny stuff is anywhere near the height of a really great Tarantino scene or something like that. And in the end, I have a very simple, summation, which is stone falls on egg, egg breaks. Egg falls on stone, egg breaks. And the broken egg here is us. And I won't ever watch this again.
Oh.
I won't ever watch this again because it's like what I said about Frankenstein many episodes ago. Like, everybody should watch it once. You can watch it once, but not everybody should watch it once. Phil can watch it once. We can watch it once. And if you're listening to this and you think, that sounds remotely interesting to me, you can watch it once. But other than that, I think it's not necessarily worth your time. It was so worth your time to listen to us talk about it. Way worth your time.
Oh yeah,
no contest. But watching the movie
better
yourself,
than Shakespeare.
Better than Shakespeare. All right. Well, we are bringing our heist series to a close here before we jump into the 40s. And next week we have a pretty popular flick. I think it made a bunch of money. I haven't seen it yet. Justin has. What is it, Justin?
Baby Driver. Zoom zoom.
Zoom zoom. Edgar Wright directs Baby Driver. And we are excited to finish out this series. We hope you'll join us for that. And I think we'll see you next week.
Farewell.
Let the movie speak.
Hey, since you're still here and still listening, thank you, by the way, we'd like to ask an additional favor of you.
We have social media. It's a thing on the internet, and all you need to do is find us on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook and like and subscribe. I know this is annoying, but we have to ask you because we want more people to hear the show. In addition to that, if you could rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen, we would greatly appreciate it. See you next week. Bye.